Hey, how you doing? Chris Verselli here. Thanks a lot for stopping by my blog and checking out my free video series called Helpful, Practical, and Easy to Implement Strategies for Maintaining a Healthy Back. And thanks a lot for all the great comments that have come in from videos 1 and 2. I've gotten some really great feedback on those videos. People telling me that it's really helpful information and that it's presented really well and that they're just really glad that I put these videos together. So that's really encouraging to me. So I thank you so much for those of you that sent me that feedback. And if you haven't seen those videos yet, go ahead and check around on this page. You should be able to find those pretty easily. They're marked videos 1 and 2 of this series. So check those out if you haven't seen those yet. But what I want to get into today is video number 3 and strategy number 3, which is maintaining proper posture. Okay, so what is proper posture? Well, if we look at the spine, we can basically see that the spine really is not a straight structure. It actually has some curves to it. And proper posture really is all about maintaining these curves so that there's proper alignment to the vertebrae, and that ensures that there's even pressure being put on the discs and that there's even stress being put on the connective tissues of the spine. So I want to talk about this thing called neutral. Okay, and you might not have heard this term thrown around, neutral spine, but I'm going to kind of teach you what that's all about because your spine actually has a number of different positions that it can move into, as you're probably aware of. It can go to the side, it can go in rotation, it can go forward, it can go backward. Neutral spine basically is the midpoint between all of those extremes. So the midpoint between here and here is your neutral in that direction. Your midpoint between here and here is your neutral in that direction, and your midpoint between here and here is your midpoint in that direction. Now, where do people usually get in trouble? Well, most likely you're not struggling with trying to maintain neutral in this direction. Okay, you're probably not walking around going like this all the time, trying to keep yourself like that, right? And you're probably not struggling trying to keep neutral in this direction, right? Because very few of us probably ever will be stuck in a position like this and have trouble getting us back to center in that direction, right? So where is it that most people get into trouble? Well, it's in the forward and backward direction that people have the most amount of trouble. I'm going to kind of flip to the side so you can see this better. So if my extreme forward is here and my extreme backward is here, then the midpoint between those two extremes is my neutral, okay? Now, where do most people spend the majority of their time? Well, they spend the majority of their time in a forward position. Okay, so they're actually kind of curled more towards this forward extreme. Okay, and that can get people into trouble because that's a position that creates uneven stress on the discs and the connective tissues of the spine. Okay, so what do I mean by that? Well, if you're in that forward posture, then what's happening is that the vertebrae are not aligned properly on the discs that are below them, and that can cause this uneven pressure to be put on those discs. And that's probably one of the most common spinal issues is disc dysfunction, whether it be disc bulges, disc herniations, or any number of disc problems. So what can happen over time is, and hopefully you can see this, is if you're bent forward, do you see the space that's created in the back right here? So I can even stick my finger in there. See how my finger's kind of stuck in between that disc and that vertebrae, right? So what happens is that you are bent forward in a position like that, and you're actually putting all the pressure onto the front part of the disc, right? Now, what can happen as a result of that is that the fluid that's inside that disc can get all this pressure built up on it, and that can actually start to move it backwards. Okay, so like if you picture a blown up balloon and it's in your hand and you're pushing on the front part of the balloon, where's the air going to go? Right? You're compressing the space in the front, so there's no space for that air to be held in. So now all the air is going to go to the back. Right? That's the same thing that happens in our discs. So when we're in this position for an extended period of time, we're building up a tremendous amount of pressure inside the disc, which pushes that fluid towards the back. Now your disc actually looks like, if you were to dissect the spine, and you were to actually look at the disc, the inside of the disc, your disc actually looks like a tree stump when the tree's been cut down, right? Maybe you've seen that before, how it has those rings, and they tell the age of the tree by how many rings there are, and so there's these rings inside, right? And those rings represent the walls of the disc. And the fluid is in the inside of that disc, okay? And now if the inside of that disc begins to have this pressure built up in it, that fluid starts getting pushed towards, one side, away from where the pressure is being built up, and that can actually break through the inside walls of the disc. And that in and of itself may not be a big problem, but if it breaks through the inside walls of the disc, and then the outer walls, and then the outermost walls, now the disc is actually broken and the fluid is coming out. That's called a disc herniation. And you may have heard of that condition. You or somebody you know might be struggling with that right now. And if you know much about it, then you know that there's usually constant pain involved, and then a lot of various types of sensations too. Like you can have just random weaknesses running through your leg. You can have numbness, tingling, even things all the way down into your foot, depending on what nerve it's compressing. So it's a really big issue. So you don't want to ever put yourself in a position where you are setting yourself up for something like that if you can avoid it, right? So one of the things that you can do is maintain this proper posture, okay? So we're going to look back at that same disc, right? So there's that space in between here. All the pressure is being put on the front part of the disc. The fluid on the inside is pushing out. So what are we going to do? We're going to kind of come back into this more neutral posture, and now you see there's no space there. Now there's actually pressure being put on the back part of the disc and the front part of the disc, so the pressure is actually being evenly distributed. That's what we want to create in all the areas of our spine. Okay, and now the place where that becomes the biggest danger is in our lumbar spine, or our lower back. Okay, and this is why so many people have issues in their lower back, is because that's the hardest place to maintain that proper posture in. Okay, and there can be a number of things influencing that bad posture. There can be muscle imbalances. There can be excessive weight in the front. There can be a lot of different things. But the key factor in all of that is the maintenance of that alignment. Okay, and if you can maintain that alignment, then you can ensure, to a great degree, the health of your disc, which can in turn prevent some of these serious spinal issues, which would create chronic pain throughout the rest of your life, basically. So you want to kind of, really get this, drilled into your mind that, you need to maintain this proper posture. So where is this neutral position? Well, if you were to stand up right now, and you were to actually kind of bend forward a little bit, okay, and not bending at your waist, so not going forward like this, but just bending, just kind of at your spine, just kind of curling your chest, your sternum in towards your pelvis, and you were to kind of go into this extreme, okay, that's one end of your range. Now if you were to go all the way backwards, that's the other end of your extreme. So find the midpoint, okay? So for me, that's about right here. Okay? Now in this midpoint, you're going to notice that you have a little bit of a curve in your lower back, okay? And you have a little bit of a curve in your upper back. Okay? Your upper back is kind of curved this way, your lower back is kind of curved this way if you're standing facing this direction. Okay? So what does that look like? Well, it looks basically like this. So your lumbar spine has a little bit of a curve forward, your thoracic spine has a little bit of a curve backward, and your cervical spine also has a little bit of a curve forward. This is neutral spine. So one of the things that can really mess people up is like when they're sitting, they will just kind of slouch. Maybe we're like at a desk and we've got some papers in front of us, or we've got a mouse that we're holding on to, and we're kind of leaned forward looking at a computer or looking at a book or looking at papers or something like that. It's really easy to get ourselves into this kind of slouch forward posture. And that's the position where the disc is getting a ton of pressure on the front and the fluid on the inside is being pushed towards the back. So we want to try to, as best as possible, get ourselves out of that. So what can we do? Well, while we're sitting, we really want to find that neutral. Right? So you want to arch your back all the way back, you want to bend your spine all the way forward, and you want to just kind of find that midpoint. Okay? And now, like I said, in that midpoint, you're going to have a little bit of an arch in your lower back. So you're going to kind of be, stomach pushed out a little bit, chest up, and just kind of maintaining this upright posture. Now, this position is going to take some work to stay in, right? Because gravity is pulling us down all the time, right? The weight of our head is on the front of us. All the weight of our internal organs are basically all on the front of us. And so all of our body's mass, for the most part, is in the front. So what happens when gravity starts pulling down on us is all that weight starts to kind of want to pull us this way, okay? That's why this direction of motion is such a hard direction to maintain neutral in. So what you want to really do is you want to be mindful of where you're at all the time. You want to be mindful of where your spine is and just how you're positioning yourself. And you want to really try to be intentional with how you're positioning your spine while you're sitting. Okay, that's a big, big deal. Now, while you're standing, it's a big deal too, but it's not quite as big of a deal as when you're sitting, because when you're sitting, the force of the chair is pushing up, the force of gravity is pushing down, and your spine is just kind of being compressed like this, like an accordion. So all the pressure being put on the disc is exponentially higher than it is when you're standing. Because when you're standing, some of the weight is kind of being distributed through your legs, and it's just not quite as stressful. And it's also not as hard to maintain neutral. So really just be mindful of where you're at, okay? And one of the things that you can kind of do is to contract your abdominal muscles, kind of suck in your stomach a little bit and kind of tighten your stomach. That's going to help to kind of pull your spine into that proper posture, that proper curve, especially in the lower spine. Stick your chest out a little bit to kind of try to maintain that. And just really be very mindful of where your spine is all throughout the day. And if you catch yourself out of neutral, try to get back in, because you really don't want to spend much time outside of that neutral posture, because it's really going to take its toll on your discs, which is going to set you up for a whole array of problems, which may or may not be ones that you could ever fully recover from. Okay, so hopefully that's helpful for you. Hopefully you're able to apply that right away and really make a change to how you're positioning your spine and helping to make a change to the health of it over the long term. Email me with any questions that you have, or stop by my office and talk to me if I have a couple minutes, and I'll just try to help you find this neutral position. It wouldn't take more than maybe 2 minutes tops. I'll try to avail myself for that if I can. And also, definitely be on the lookout for the coming videos. I'm going to get into some really specific strategies with how to actually reverse some of that pressure that's already been built up in those discs. If you have a disc bulge or you have a disc herniation, you're going to want to really want to check that out. Or if you just want to prevent that stuff, you're going to really want to check that out too. And I'm also going to talk about some proper sitting techniques and things like that in later videos. So definitely keep your eyes peeled for those. And just email me with any comments that you have too. I love to hear the positive feedback, or any negative feedback if something could have been presented better or whatever. I'd love to hear that as well. So thanks a lot for tuning in today. I really appreciate you giving me this opportunity to educate you and help you ensure the health of your spine over the long term. I hope that it really helps you and that you're going to be a lot healthier for it. So have an awesome day, and I'll see you next time. God bless.